When does poverty become evidence of evil? When does desperation look like a curse? For Sarah Good, the answer was February 2nd, 1692. On that date, Sarah Good went to the Salem Village parsonage to beg money for herself and her two children, 4-year-old Dorothy and an infant. The minister, Samuel Parris, gave something to Dorothy, and Sarah Good allegedly went away muttering something under her breath. After this incident, the mysterious illness afflicting the minister's daughter, Betty, and his niece, Abigail, intensified. Reverend Parris later interpreted Sarah Good's parting words as a curse. Welcome to Salem Witch Trials Daily. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jack. Today we're looking at the life and tragic death of one of the very first people accused in Salem Village, Sarah Good.
When people think of the usual suspects in a witch hunt, the marginalized, the impoverished, the defiant, Sarah Good fits the mold perfectly.
Sarah was born Sarah Soulart in Wenham, Massachusetts, around 1653. She was the daughter of a prosperous innkeeper named John Soulart.
But tragedy struck early. Her father died by suicide when she was young, and while he left a substantial estate valued at £500, Sarah and her sisters were effectively cheated out of their inheritance by their stepfather.
It's a heartbreaking turn. By 1692, she had married her second husband, William Good. He was a laborer described as a weaver, but he struggled to keep employment. The family was destitute. They had no permanent home and were often begging for charity from their neighbors.
And in the Puritan mindset, poverty wasn't just a misfortune. It was often viewed as a moral failing, a sign that God had turned away from that person. Sarah Good might not have been quiet about her situation either. If she was refused charity, she was said to walk away muttering. She claimed she was reciting commandments or psalms, but her neighbors feared she was muttering curses.
And this reputation made her an easy target. In February of 1692, when the sickness began in the household of the minister, Sarah Good was named alongside Tituba and Sarah Osborne as one of the tormentors.
On February 29th, the warrant was issued. Constable George Locker arrested her and brought her to Ingersoll's Tavern on March 1st. Because the crowd was so massive, they had to move the examination to the nearby meeting house.
The transcript of her examination by magistrates John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin is intense. They pressed her hard. They asked, "What evil spirit have you familiarity with?"
And Sarah Good didn't back down. She answered simply, "None." When they asked why she hurt the children, she replied, "I do not hurt them. I scorn it."
I scorn it. That resistance is so powerful. But the evidence against her was mounting, not just from the afflicted girls who were throwing fits in the courtroom, but from her own husband.
That's one of the saddest parts of the story. William Good testified against Sarah. He called her an enemy to all good and openly said he feared she was a witch.
It wasn't just Sarah who suffered. She was a mom. When she was arrested, she had a daughter, Dorothy, who was between 4 and 5 years old, and she had given birth to a baby girl in December.
That infant was taken to jail with Sarah. We know that the conditions in the Salem and Boston jails were horrific. Cold, filthy, and expensive, as prisoners had to pay for their own upkeep. Tragically, the infant died in custody before Sarah was executed.
And little Dorothy. Sometimes she has been referred to Dorcas, but her name was Dorothy. They arrested her too. At 4 years old, she was interrogated, confessed to being a witch, and claimed her mother had given her a snake as a familiar.
Dorothy was chained in the dungeon. Though she survived the trials, she was permanently traumatized. She lived the rest of her life in poverty and instability.
Back to Sarah, who never confessed. She maintained her innocence to the very end. On July 19th, she was taken to Proctor's Ledge to be hanged alongside 4 other women.
And it was there that she delivered one of the most famous lines in witch trial history. The Reverend Nicholas Noyes urged her to confess, telling her she was a witch and she knew it.
Sarah Good declared, "You are a liar. I am no more a witch than you are a wizard. If you take my life, God will give you blood to drink."
Legend has it that years later, Nicholas Noyes died of a hemorrhage, choking on his own blood.
She was a woman who had lost everything. Her well-being, any resources. Her husband turned his back on her. She couldn't take care of her new baby. She and her little girl sat in jail, but she never lost her voice.
If you want to learn more about Sarah Good, we have a dedicated episode on the thing about witch hunts in our Witch Hunt Victim Stories series.